Hi folks, Thomas Henson with thomashenson.com, and today is another episode of Big Data, Big Questions. And so today I'm going to talk a little bit about why data engineers care about DynamoDB and why it's really popular and just some questions around that. And if you stick around, I'll tell you how many times I had to do that spin around to get it right. But stay around to the end of the video for me to tell you all about that. So today I wanted to talk about DynamoDB. It's something that I've gotten into and really dug in probably I'd say in the last year and a half. So as I went through getting my AWS certification, I've talked about it here on a couple episodes before. I've had some questions actually around AWS and specific to data engineering. So I thought it'd be important to talk a little bit about DynamoDB. DynamoDB is the NoSQL database. And AWS is specific, so they do offer an off-prem, something you can run, I think, in a Docker container. But primarily, everything is on-prem. The one for the Docker container is just for testing in your local environment, and some of the other pieces there just to be able to play with it. But it's a NoSQL database. AWS boasts it. It's the most popular cloud-based NoSQL database, which I totally believe because of the popularity for it. There's so many different things that you can do with it. It's primarily, it's a key value and a document database. So think of, if you're used to like the SQL world, it's totally different from that aspect of it too. And I'll talk a little bit about some of the differences there because, if you're coming from traditional SQL, which, before I even got to the big data world, that's where I was. And even kind of going through Hadoop, one of the big things, one of my first kind of hands-on with it was in the NoSQL world was HBase. So there's some huge differences when I first went to it. So by the time I got to DynamoDB, it was pretty easy to transition and actually liked it a lot more. So talked about how AWS said that it's the most popular, but why specifically do data engineers like using DynamoDB? Well, like I said, it's a NoSQL database, which is easy to set up. So if you've ever done anything where you've set up, SQL, MySQL, anything from the Oracle world or in the traditional relational databases, there's a lot that goes into it when you're first setting it up. Because if you need to change anything in the future, especially if it's in third normal form, man, it's going to be a couple cups of coffee, it's going to be a long day, maybe even have to work the weekend, right? So you want to make sure you get it right when you're talking, traditional relational database. But with a NoSQL database, generally they're pretty easy to set up, right? The indexes are a lot more loose, and you're able to kind of, set and decide, how you want to set those up. And if you need to change them in the future, you're normally really not locked into it too. Now with that comes some overhead and some other things that you have to worry about, right? Like you want to make sure, especially when we're talking about, setting this up in a cloud base where, you're being charged by the gigabyte or being charged by the hour, you really want to make sure that you're getting some of the things set up so you're not running up a high cost for your bill, especially if you're doing it for your local environment and just doing some testing on your own. I mean, I did rack up like a $900 Azure bill one time too, just by playing around and doing something wrong. So you have to be very careful whenever you're setting those up. But if you're just setting it up to test in your environment, it's really easy. It's a couple different options to do it. You can do it, you can build, point and click all from the AWS console and really just start playing around with it there. Or you can do it from the CLI. So I've got some demos and some videos. I'll put them in the comment section here below on how to just build like a CRUD app and, just be able to start building out and using the AWS CLI to start using DynamoDB. But like I said, it's really cool. It's really easy to set up. That's one of the reasons that data engineers love playing with DynamoDB. The second, and probably most important, not just because it's easy, right? Like if we just went by what things were easy, I mean, there'd be a lot different applications that are used, right? Maybe Java would never be used. Hey, I used to do Java. I can make those jokes. But no, the second and probably the key reason why so many, DynamoDB is so popular for data engineers is the APIs. And I was talking a little bit earlier about, how you can set it up from the CLI, but I mean, there's Python, .NET, Java. I made a Java joke earlier, but there's a ton of different APIs. I mean, you can even use PHP. So a ton of different ways to interact with DynamoDB, and really it can be that landing zone for a lot of your data, especially data that you need to go back and query too. So there are some key differences around some of the queries, and I'll talk about it here in just a second. But like I said, the APIs, huge reason to be able to interact. With Lambda being so popular, there's even a DynamoDB Lambda function with the DynamoDB streams that allows for you to automate some of those pieces and be able to use Lambda from a perspective of your DynamoDB tables. So what are some of the differences between a relational database and a NoSQL, and specifically around DynamoDB? Like I said, when I first got into HBase, it took me a long time to really understand, okay, how the query is different. Like, I know it's not SQL, but it could be SQL, but it really wasn't SQL. So, how do you query tables or query or scan or do different things? So some of the first things that you want to walk through and you want to understand is, if you think about your relational database, think about how, we have a table, you have rows and columns. And then with DynamoDB, what you're going to have is you're going to have a table, you're going to have items, and you're going to have attributes. And so it's a little bit different when you're starting to go through it. There's a ton of tutorials out there. I'll put some here in the description where you can kind of go through, where I'll take you through a CRUD app and even show you some of the APIs to be able to query it. But if you're going back to query, don't throw all the SQL that you know out the window. Maybe don't throw it out the window, but you're not going to be using SQL whenever you're doing it. You're going to be heavily relying on those APIs that we were talking about, and even if you're using the CLI, there's a little bit of differences in some of the commands. So you're going to be doing a lot of things from the command line if you're creating those apps and building some of those queries out, or you might want to get familiar with JSON and just being able to write, especially when you talk about bulk uploads and being able to just make your tables on the fly within your application. So a lot of things there. You'll see, as you start going through it, especially when you look at DynamoDB streams, how much Lambda kind of plays in. So that gives you an opportunity to play around with it there too. So final question, what everybody, the reason we're watching Big Data Big Questions is this a skill that you should learn? I get a lot of questions around, should I get an AWS certification? What should I do here? Is DynamoDB a skill that you should learn? Absolutely, positively, yes. If you're doing any sort of AWS, at work, in your development environment, or you're looking to get a career, and you see that one of the job postings or some of the job postings that you're starting to look at are heavily on AWS, then definitely want to jump in and learn what DynamoDB has to offer. You want to learn how to navigate and do some of the things around that. You don't have to be an expert in it, but I will tell you, there's not a lot of overhead to get started. Now, you can go very deep in it, but to be able to get started and be able to go around, you'll just want to go through some of the key terms, like limits, and understand the indexing, and be able to build your own table. Maybe even write some quick Lambda expressions. Go through the CLI, do those portions there, but it's like I said, there's not a lot of overhead to get started. You can go pretty deep, but I wouldn't think you would need to, just depending on what kind of role you're looking to do in the future. But definitely pick it up, add it to your tool bag, and let me know what you think. So if you have any ideas, hey, did I get this right? What do you think if you use DynamoDB a lot? Do you find that, hey, maybe people should go a lot deeper in it too? Or if it's on your list, what do you think? Are you gonna pick up and learn it? Just let me know in the comment section here below. And if you have a question or you have a thought that you want me to tackle here on Big Data Big Questions, put it in the comment section here below. I'll do my best to answer it. And until next time, I'll see you.